Welcome to the Intrazone, a show about the Microsoft 365 Intelligent Intranet. I'm Mark Cashman, flying solo on this one. We are getting Chris back for the next episode that we're planning on aligning on some news coming from the land of Microsoft Viva. On today's episode, we first chat with Cathy Dew, Senior Product Manager on the SharePoint team, and then we're going to connect with two of our partners from Pointwork in Copenhagen, Denmark. That's Peter Brinch Larsen, their CTO, and Lars Kristensen, one of their principal consultants. Across the various parts of this episode, our aim is to dig into the value and design of SharePoint templates. But wait, there's more. Microsoft 365 templates, list templates, Teams templates. I'm actually trying to pitch for them to be called Team Splits, though the branding team has yet to take me up on that offer. But in general, we are drilling into all sorts of templates, hence the title, Templates, 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 with, towards the end, some of the real-world use and adoption of templates plus governance for Pointwork's customer Novo Nordisk. Across this entire episode, we're going to dig into the design, strategy, and use of templates. And it kind of reminds me of something that you might know in the past as the Fab 40. I want to declare this is not the Fab 40. There were a lot of things that were of value from the Fab 40, but they were really hard to manage and carry forward, both in the actual rollout of the templates themselves and just the innovation for the way that the architecture of SharePoint was very different in the past. If you think about templates of the past, the value is still there, but the way that site templates, just as one example, are created and designed and deployed today is very different. They're a lot more flexible in how you create them, deploying them. You don't have to do it for the first time on the site itself. You can actually update a site with a new template at any time without impact to content, with additional value that you might be applying that new template for. The Fab 40 certainly has a great history. To some, it's a little bit of a painful history, but it's a reality that there has always been this value of customers wanting to save time, to put a lot of energy into doing it once, so the next time you do it, it's the same. It's a rinse and repeat or a stamping approach. Just stamp out a new site and it has all of these things already intact, both so the end user who may or may not know how to do it doesn't have to do it, and from an IT perspective, they can stay within the boundaries of their governance plan. So if we look at templates of today, a great place to go and look at templates, and I will have this link in the show notes, is what we refer to as the SharePoint Lookbook. And if you just go to lookbook.microsoft.com, you'll see a whole host of templates, both some very new and fresh as of this and last month. Some have been around for a number of years, but they're all the modern templates that the SharePoint team has been building, sometimes as art of the possible to encourage our partners or our customers to build out their own custom templates in the same methods, or at least to be aware of what's possible. But also some of these templates, if you go to the lookbook, you can actually review the template and deploy it directly into your tenant. A lot of that value is there for you to use today. There are new things coming. When you hear us chat with Cathy, she'll articulate some of the things that are fresh and new, but also some of the plans that they're doing for new templates and new ways of delivering the templates. But if you want to get a great window into what are SharePoint templates today, go to the SharePoint Lookbook or crack open and create a new site and see what templates are already available in the product itself. And when you think about other templates that are in parallel to SharePoint sites or getting connected in some of our new offerings that we have, like the Microsoft 365 connected templates, it's not just a project anymore. These are actually now about 7 or 8 of them baked into the product, available to go when you start a new team in Microsoft Teams and you choose one of these connected templates scenarios, it's going to do a lot of that work for you. The easiest one to talk about is the project management scenario, but we cover with Cathy a number of these different connected templates. And the value is just hopefully how it sounds. It's a Teams template that then makes a call to instantiate a new SharePoint site template. And within the SharePoint site, there may be specific list templates that get applied, or other configurations across how your team is set up once you get the assets created in SharePoint to have those automatically added as tabs in Teams. There's so much that you can do in the context of having the template do the work for you, and then stitching it all together. That's the real value. Even just within a template of its own, stitching together what you can do within that list template or Teams template or the SharePoint site template. But then to be able to stitch all of those multiple templates together, that's the time-saving value. And so that's a lot of work that Microsoft is doing. When we turn to talk to our partner Pointwork, you will see how they take that and build off of that even further to help scale out the rollout of an intranet in the context of templates with governance intact. That notion of compliance and governance is hugely valuable and hugely important. You have a specific governance plan, whether it's just for SharePoint or for your broader information architecture and how you combine and use different apps, some Microsoft, some not. The end value, though, is when you get to an end user to be able to create a site or a team of their own, that what they create is something that's known by IT to be set up and configured in the right way, and maybe access controls already intact. And for the end user, they hopefully just save a lot of time because they don't have to set up as many tabs or create as many lists or sites or pages or whatever it is that the template will help accelerate. There really is that time to value savings with the comfort and control that IT can then bake into that, giving the keys to the end user, but having it be a balance of governable and manageable information, intelligent intranet. So I'm going to pause there because hearing from our subject matter experts is really where the real value is. And first up, we will talk to Cathy Dew, Senior Product Manager on the SharePoint engineering team. Here we are in part one, and part one, we are joined now by Cathy Dew from the SharePoint team, who does a lot more than just templates, but you would never say just templates. There's so much to templates, both what you can do with them, the art of the possible, and a lot of the what you see and why you see it is because of the planning that Cathy does, and then the work with a ton of people to make them real. So Cathy, welcome to the IntraZone.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Maybe before we get to templates, just generally describe what is your role on the SharePoint team and then why templates?
Yeah, so I am a senior product manager in the team, and I am in the area of sites. And so one of the things that I really work on and work with is the different experiences that our users have in interacting with the site as a container. And so with a part of this, templates became a really big component of this. One of the things we hear a lot from people is that they don't know how to get started, or that they find it really hard to get started from a blank site. And so templates are a great way to give people inspiration and ideas for how to get started and to be able to create things more quickly.
So this applies to sites of all types. You said sites, pretty broad and generic. So I'm assuming team sites, communication sites, hub sites, home sites, things that might show up in Viva connections, and on, but very much in the modern space and at the impetus of when you create a site, and even after the fact that you've created a site, templates can help you in a huge way define, like you said, the art of the possible. So if somebody's new to templates, and you gave just a kind of a brief description, what are some of the things that you would maybe use to encourage them to look a little further into templates and start using them?
Yeah, one of the things that I like to tell people is templates is a great way to utilize these common scenarios. A lot of people work with projects. And so one of the great things is that we've spent the time thinking about what are the bare minimum necessities that you're going to need in a site that's focused around project management. And so we have a site template set up for that includes lists. It includes some sample contents. Different page templates are included a lot of times in our site templates. So to give you not just those bare minimal necessities like the list templates that are necessary for project management scenarios, but to also give you sample content, because sometimes that's the hardest part of getting started is what should I even put in my site? So these site templates really give us the best of all the worlds by combining different types of templates together and giving you inspiration for how to get started, but also these repeatable scenarios that you can use over and over and over again. And if your template and your site tends to grow from maybe it started out as a project management scenario, but in the end, it grows up to be a different type of scenario, and there's a template for that, you can apply that new template at any time and still have all of the contents and the work that you did while it had the project management template applied to it and still utilize that. So it gives you a bit of growth scenarios as well with your site and an easy way for those types of things to happen.
I remember when the team was starting to ship that capability of being able to apply a template after the fact, even another template, one that would add additional capabilities, change the look a little bit. It never removes or adjusts the content, but it certainly might adjust the look and feel and the additive content or capabilities. You mentioned project management. I think that's a pretty common scenario, easy one to grok. But I also know that the breadth of the templates that you have and that you've maybe even released recently, I've seen some that are more education focused. I know there was a specific one that focused the being able to accelerate the use of syntax. But if you were to pick beyond the project management example, just so other people can ground in the what makes a template and maybe, what is one element of that template that makes it a useful template, do you mind sharing one or two more examples through that lens of what is the scenario and then what is it about the template that helps that scenario?
There's so many great template scenarios out there. It really is sometimes hard for us to narrow it down for what templates we want to build for people. But I think some of the ones that I love to highlight and look at are some of our ones that are more related to learning. And so when you look at our learning templates, we have a great communication site template called Learning Central. And this is a great landing page location. So when you think about communication sites, remember they're intended to be more of a publication portal, how you're going to communicate to your entire audience. So you're thinking about how do I tell people about different training opportunities or learning or different components that might come into play for training and education and learning. And Learning Central gives you that great centralized landing point with calendar and all of these great different pieces right there tied together for you to utilize and to build out to showcase all of these great opportunities within your organization. And so that's one that I have really loved to see. And then you can take it really kind of across the board. We have templates for all kinds of different scenarios. We've even built with some of our team site templates, some very specific scenario-based templates for retail organizations, where maybe you're trying to manage inventory or to manage people and events happening in a particular location. And so some of our retail scenario templates are great for that. So there's a lot of different options and a really great breadth of scenario options between our team sites and our communication sites.
One of the elements that I think we have already put into market and are starting to talk about, and I know you were a champion on the SharePoint side of it, is just that broader conversation of what we now call Microsoft 365 connected templates. What about the connected templates is maybe just the review quickly of technically what they do and what's new, but then how does that even more broadly open up this art of the possible, both visibly to put it to example so that people can see what's possible, but also this particular one does a lot for you in the context of starting a new project.
So with our connected templates, these are a really great joint and unified way to think about how we collaborate in general. And in today's world, we know that people collaborate between SharePoint and documents and that kind of more traditional collaboration method, but also integrate a lot of Microsoft Teams in it. Just like you said, chat, conversations, meetings, all of these different components that are really vital to how we collaborate today. And so M365 connected templates unify the Teams scenario-based templates and the SharePoint scenario-based templates, so that when you pick one of these 7 scenarios that we have launched with today, that you get not only your team created from a template that's customized for that scenario, but you also get the SharePoint site, the corresponding SharePoint site for that team, utilizing the corresponding scenario template in SharePoint. And to make it even better, we know that a lot of people spend a lot of time in Teams today. So that great SharePoint site with those scenario-based resources get automatically pinned as tabs in the general channel of that team that's created with this connected template as well. So I'll give a great example of it, maybe not going back to project management, although that is one of those 7 scenarios. We have an employee onboarding experience as a part of this. So thinking about all of the things that you might be doing as you come into a new organization and having that Teams conversation where I can ask questions and talk to other people that are in similar experiences and have that different conversation, but also quickly and easily have access to all of the resources that I need from the SharePoint site to get me on board and started in my organization. It's a really great unified experience, really bringing things together and allowing you to quickly and easily get started with those types of joined experiences.
Yeah, and the joining them part, I think, is one of the most important parts of what maybe you really don't have to do when you use the connected templates, which is to set it all up. To configure a tab is not rocket science in Teams. You have to know that you can do it. You have to know which apps can be tabs in Teams, and then you have to do it, which takes a couple clicks and a couple minutes, per tab or shorter. But relatively speaking, across the breadth of what a connected template sets up for you, it's a huge time saver. And once you've seen it done once, then oh, this is what's possible. It reminded me of when we shipped the what in the industry, in our world, a lot of people called Teamify, when SharePoint existed prior to Teams being released. And then when Teams came out, people wanted to connect the two, which we were doing work there, both out of box and sort of manually after the fact. But Teamify has that, what you're talking about. You can choose which lists and which pages and which documents you maybe want to highlight as tabs. And you still have to make those choices manually. But then when you get back over to Teams, voila, they're set up for you. This takes it even a step further. Both with the scenario in mind, but also that connective tissue between SharePoint and Teams and many other things like lists and Planner. I think it's a really wonderful project. I'm really glad that both the teams shook hands across the aisle, and that I know you were a champion of maybe making sure all the hands were coming across the aisle, if I can put it that way. So if that's an internal partnership, one of the other things I just wanted to get your perspective on was external partners, because later in this show, we're going to be talking to one of our partners. Their name is Pointwork. And one of the things that they do at scale is the use of templates with governance in mind. And they help customers roll out a lot of their intranet at scale with in mind of how are they then going to manage it from day one. What would you tell a partner? And I'll just say lightly, this might also apply to any person in a company that's going to be taking on this rolling out of templates or making templates more available within their company. What do you tell them that you most want them as a takeaway as they're engaging on thinking about their intranet a little bit differently?
I think one of the big things when it comes to templates today is that when we're talking to partners, we recognize and first acknowledge that the types of templates, the types of site templates that they can create today are different and limited in capability from the types of templates that Microsoft can create today. And with that, the new Pages API is out in beta, and we're really excited to see where that goes in coming into site templates and starting to break down some of those barriers between what custom templates for organizations that can be created today versus what Microsoft is able to create in our scenario-based templates. And we're really looking to see those continue to converge until they become the same in the future. And then I think long term, it's just kind of looking at not just in the site template space, but across all of the different types of templates, because templates and site templates, while they're one of the ones that we talk about a lot, they are so powerful because they contain list templates, because they contain page templates, because they can contain document templates, because they can contain all of these other types of templates. So I like to tell people that the first thing that you should ask anything is there already a template for that? And then if there is, maybe it's a unique way of trying to find the right combination of existing templates into the right site template to move it forward. You shouldn't recreate the wheel, but trying to find the right way to combine those together to make them that really powerful, reusable solution is where we want and where we hope to see our partners continue to move forward with.
I think of probably a project you have really close at hand in terms of what you've been leveraging and also representing is the SharePoint lookbook, which I think now refer to the Microsoft lookbook, which truly is a visual art of the possible. And if people didn't know, a place where you can deploy templates, and that's getting closer to product. But of what you just said, you should know what's possible. Pay attention to the templates landscape, not just SharePoint, but all of these types of templates. So you know how to do things maybe more quickly and to your point, stitch them together, which leads into stitching them together. That might be a programmatic, for lack of me understanding what I'm about to say, a PowerShell script or something that, is sort of a template of a template for other templates. But to your last point of talking about the Pages API, the Lists API, the Files API, that's just within SharePoint world. There's so many rich APIs in the graph that templates can prescribe to do exactly everything you just said. That's a lot of spectrum of opportunity. And for partners, definitely, I mean the word opportunity, both working with customers and honing up their business, but also just a possibility of if we can do it, and Microsoft has their own first-party templates that Cathy and her team uses, what we do is possible by third parties and customers of themselves.
One of the things that we really look at when we're trying to identify what templates we're going to create, like you mentioned, the lookbook, we've really been taking a lot of our inspiration for the templates that we're currently working on and that many people should expect to see, sometime early this year. Those are a lot of these inspired from the lookbook. We utilized a lot of these sites that showed up in the lookbook in our demos at events and different conferences. And we heard people ask, those look great. How can I get that in my site? And so the concept of the lookbook, the art of the possible, came about. And then as our in-product templates, the ones that Microsoft gives you as part of that apply template, we've started now taking inspiration from those lookbook templates and figuring out how can we make those very easily reusable components within the product. And so there's kind of an evolution there, but we also know that there's a limit to how many templates and how many scenarios that we can provide and keep in a way very generic so that they apply to any organization. So there's always so much opportunity for our partners in creating additional templates and different ways to combine them together.
Where do people get started with templates? What is the, hey, you've either just invested in Microsoft 365 and maybe you're starting to think about deploying SharePoint to some scale, or you've had it for a long time, but maybe you didn't know about templates. What is that kind of first call to action that you would encourage people?
The thing that just like I said before, is there already a template for what I'm trying to do? And if you don't even know what you're trying to do, templates are a great way to explore and to look at the different possibilities that are out there. You just maybe know that you want a site to look a particular way, and you don't necessarily care about the contents that are in the sample that you're picking from. Maybe you're just looking for some visual inspiration. Maybe you're looking for what do I need my site to do? A template can give you a lot of that inspiration. So whether your site is brand new or you're looking to revitalize your site or even add some new inspiration into your site templates give you that. And you go to our Apply Site Template Gallery and you can see all of the different templates that are available for your type of site. So they are filtered by communication site or team site. And so you can see exactly what can be utilized in your particular site. And as we mentioned before, templates are completely additive on the SharePoint side. So if you were to pick one template and then apply another template a few days later, or even that same day to try them out, that just simply adds that additional template content into your existing site. We've worked really hard to make sure that people can grow and evolve their sites using templates and kind of have that content grow. And the homepage just gets reset to the new homepage, but that existing page that you've maybe worked all of your content into is there in your pages gallery. And all you have to do is go to that site pages library and have access to all of your content, all of your documents, all of your lists, all of your items. Everything is still available within the site because the new site template simply adds new template content into your site. It's a really great way to explore without fear that you're getting rid or deleting something that you've been working on.
I feel inspired to go do this right after we talk. I'm going to grab a team site that's been sitting there for a while, and I'm going to apply a new template to do it. I'm going to go do that. Cathy, thank you for your time. Thank you for doing a lot of the internal rigmarole of getting templates to market and getting other teams to think about templates and getting templates to market of their own and being a lot of the bridge between. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I'll just give one last plug. If you haven't used a template, go out and try them out. And do know that we're always innovating and adding new templates, including some really great templates with Microsoft Syntax that show you how Microsoft Syntax works and different scenarios that you can utilize with Syntax. So not just in SharePoint, not just in Teams, but taking it a step further into even more M365 products.
All right, so you know a little bit about the design and the approach that Microsoft is taking to build SharePoint sites and how the SharePoint team is working with other teams to build more connected templates, or at least to roll out templates in a similar fashion so that it makes sense for how you use them, but ultimately the value that you get when you use them. And it's the when you use them part that really is where our next part of the conversation in this episode is going to take us. So we're going to turn to talk to Lars and Peter from Pointwork out of Copenhagen, Denmark, to hear more about how they approach working with templates, both ones that we provide and how they build on top of it. They have a specific tool called Mocha 365 that we're going to hear more about that is really that scale engine that they offer to their customers to be able to stamp out the right templates, but then to be able to deploy them to hundreds, if not thousands of sites. And to have different models in place for whatever and however they want to configure the templates. The tool then helps orchestrate all of that. So enough blah, blah, blah from Mark. We are now going to hear some real world use from a partner and also some insights about one of their customers, Novo Nordisk. Let's take a moment now to talk with Peter and Lars from Pointwork. So let us now turn to part two, and part two is all about a real-world implementation, how to use templates at scale, but really in use, not just what they are, but how beneficial they are to your business. If you're a customer, you're going to want to hear this next part. So joining us from Denmark, across the pond, are Peter and Lars, who come from Pointwork, and their specialty is using templates and doing them at scale with governance. I'm going to let them tell you more about that. But Peter, Lars, welcome to the Intrazone.
Hi, Mark. Hi, Mark. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. I was really happy to learn not only about your functionality that you have building on top of our templates. It's not always that you get to talk about SharePoint templates, but to see it in action with your tool. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But so our audience knows a little bit more about you and in context with what we're talking about today. Can you share a little bit of what you do at Pointwork, but also some of your history with SharePoint and templates? And Lars, we'll start with you.
Actually, I came from the CMS world back in the late 90s, where I was creating websites and intranets for a little Danish startup, hoping that Microsoft someday would pick us up and buy us like Navision you did with Navision, but that really never happened. And eventually I ended up being a SharePoint consultant and implementing some large-scale intranet solutions for the private and public sector. And that sort of morphed into working for some of these out-of-the-box intranet SharePoint partners that had sort of built an out-of-the-box intranet on top of Microsoft 365 and SharePoint. Mainly Wisdom was a place I used to work. And that's where I sort of got my first sense of templates, creating an intranet based on templates to sort of ease the process of building an intranet from the ground up. And then eventually I ended up working for the first cloud-only partner here in Denmark called Adapted. You might have know it. It no longer exists. But there I sort of stumbled into the industrial and commercial building industry where they needed some project templates that sort of facilitated and supported the way that they used to work with their projects and being able to communicate with the people out on the building site. And then, of course, all the standardized processes they have and the documents that they needed to have as part of that project. And then eventually I ended up here at Pointwork a couple of years back. Where I work as a principal consultant, which means that I go out and inspire our clients to use Microsoft 365 and get the most out of it. Lately, I've also been working, you've mentioned a little bit, on Marker 365, which is our template provision engine. And it's a bit of a Swiss Army knife, so I'm sort of helping figure out how do we use this and how do our clients use our product to sort of become more productive and sort of getting control of their Teams and SharePoint applications. So that's a little bit about me.
I love the inspiration part, and from your history of the intranet in a box, I think that carries over perfectly with when people are thinking about how do we tackle doing, more with different site types and, whether it's the big company portal or if it's team sites at scale or anything, you're spot on with those being driven by templates. And I say that with, we hope they're driven by templates. Peter, do you mind filling in the details a little bit, your history with SharePoint templates and anything relevant for today?
My history with SharePoint and templates, I think they go hand in hand. My background is that I'm a software developer, and I always had reusability in mind, and templates, it fits very well into that. So I first started working professional with SharePoint back in 2007, back when the SharePoint server 2007 had a major boom in Denmark. And at that time, I landed a job as a software developer, where I started working with SharePoint. And prior to that, I did a lot of web development and work in content management systems. And I can still clearly recall the first solution I made in SharePoint. So the very first one I did was a simple list template built with some XSLT views in SharePoint Designer. So that was the good old days when I got started with that.
I haven't heard the acronym XSLT for a couple of years, and it warms my heart to even hear it out loud. I'll just say that briefly, but continue.
Yeah, so I really love the JSON improvements that's been made. So it's a lot easier to get started with SharePoint today.
Yeah.
So
sure.
Yeah, back in the days it was hard work getting started. I think, but that was some of the things I really loved with it. It wasn't easy, but it provided a lot of value. So another solution I made at that time was something that was named Product Portal, and that was really fun as well. So with my developer background, I insisted that we should build it in a way that we could go through staging environments so we can ensure quality and so on. So the solution, it consisted of making site definitions and ONets, and as part of site definitions, there was site scoped and web scoped features, and it was built with the site columns, content types, list templates, page templates, and so on. So basically, a lot of the building blocks I still use in solutions today was part of the solution back then as well.
I believe a lot of the patterns and practices, if it's fair to say it in that way, the tech might change and some of the features, of course, hopefully get better and make you do less work. But I think the patterns of the value of a template, how to implement them, things to think about, and of course, the value at the outcome, is a pretty common pattern that's been around for a while.
Yeah, it is. And I can see I can reuse a lot of my knowledge back in the day. So there's some of the thresholds that's still good to know and so on. So you don't use SharePoint in the wrong way. And as long as you use SharePoint as intended, it's a great product. And then moving along away from the VSP solution. So when PNP templates and PNP provisioning arrived back in 2015, I started using that. And then I just try to tag along and adapt the new template capabilities that you keep pushing out as part of the modern experience.
Earlier in the episode, we talked to Cathy Dew. From a Microsoft perspective, things that they plan to build and templates and how they think about them. And this is across SharePoint sites, lists, teams with the connected templates. And there's a lot of excitement in a good way, for people to get started out of the box, for people to build custom. And a lot of the things that, we have at our fingertips at Microsoft, we enable partners and customers to do the same. Of what it sounds like a lot and probably more than I. Within the last 1 or 2 years, what would you say has been the most useful innovation that's come from Microsoft in the template space?
I think one of the things I'm most excited about is the metadata and content types are brought back to life. I've worked with SharePoint for a long time, and I think the switch from classic to modern, there was a period where I was a bit melancholic because, there was a lot of features back in the classic which didn't appear to be that easy to use in the modern, but now I think most of the features are back, and actually it's some of the features that are back are working better than before. So, for instance, if I should highlight a feature too, for me it would be the modern content type hub and how you can add the content types to modern lists today. It's a lot more user friendly than going into list settings and so on.
Lars, is there anything on your end from a consultant when you're on site and, it's sort of hey, you might not know about this, but let me tell you something that Microsoft has done that will benefit you. What might be something that you would highlight?
Just a lot of the things that Cathy explained at the ESPC about the templates that are arriving and are sort of predefined and really helping adoption with the clients. I'm really experiencing a lot of clients having almost being paralyzed because they don't really know which tool to use at what point. A lot of the clients I talk to are very project management heavy, and they don't know what applications to use and what combination, and these templates sort of help them out in that sense. That's the things that I'm excited about, and I really see how the users are really happy about getting this help and sort of being able to push the adoption out in organizations.
Yeah, so let's talk about the help that specifically comes from Pointwork. You have consultancy, you've got a lot of probably conversations that you help manage, walking people off the ledge, pulling them back into reality. It's not that hard. You just have to do it, with kind of the proper approach and then to think about it in new ways. Do you mind just sharing a little bit more of maybe the methodology behind how Pointwork goes about it, and within that same breath, certainly to highlight Mocha 365 and what it offers?
Yeah, it varies very much on where and how mature the clients are. But usually what we see is that we have, especially after Corona, we've seen a lot of corporations that really have dove in directly into using Teams and SharePoint a lot more than they used to. And there's sort of experiencing from the user perspective, and again, back to the which tool when issue. And from the IT perspective, they're having issues in regards to the sprawl that's creating and sort of keeping everything in control and staying secure and compliant while not clipping the wings of their users. So what we do is usually we go in and we sort of help them out and start from a ground zero perspective and sort of say, okay, well, what is it? What would create value when you're doing user scenarios? And we run through that, and then we sort of put that into our templates. And by doing that, we sort of course, have them along for the process. And adoption-wise, we of course have used the best user practices of Microsoft in regards to getting them to adopt and use the application as well. But it really helps a lot when you're sort of basing it on creating value for the end user and also for the IT people.
Peter, if I can ask you, from a tool perspective, when you agree on what the approach is, you understand the scope of, what customer is asking for and their preferred outcomes. When the tool, you start to leverage it and it, takes in a lot of those inputs and then spits out, all the goodness. What is it that it is doing so that we understand what Mocha 365 is? And then maybe, just ground it in, some of the how it's doing it.
First off, we always try to make use of standard features in Microsoft 365. So in some case, that's sufficient, but often we also run into scenarios where it's too complicated for them to guide the users into when to use which tool when. So in those cases, they typically turn off the group creation and use our tool to provide some self-service, and IT can then figure out and configure some templates. They can either be SharePoint communication sites, or it could be team sites with a lot of content and structure, so it's easier to get started and being productive and working in the tools in the Microsoft 365 platform. And when IT defined these templates, you can do some of the things that you can do in the standard SharePoint when we're talking, or Teams when we talk templates, but it's also possible to define things like content and also some governance rules, and also have metadata on the teams that you create. So that makes it easier for IT to ensure that the line of business take ownership of all the sites that's being created, and then avoid this scenario with all the team sprawl and so on.
And I think that's one of the hardest things for Microsoft when you think of individual customer use, where it becomes, we can't add content that we then think every customer is going to need. And that's certainly, I think, a big value where, as you're building specific to one particular customer, and of course you have a lot of customers, their use of templates and their use of your service and system means that you can actually, in those templates, put in their custom content, especially when it's repeatable content that every contract needs or every project needs to start with, whatever the content might be. And that's a ton of value, because the ability to add content is there. And maybe part of the awareness is it's possible. But the reality of then when you actually build out the template that you want to use, not just learn from, it needs to be a little bit more specific to what the business needs.
Yeah, exactly. And we also find a lot of scenarios where it's very useful to, for instance, to have content types as part of the template. So that's useful for when we come to search and also using per view features. So it's easier to apply retention and sensitivity labels and so on based on the metadata, on both on the site and container level, but also at the document level.
So there is no feature that's out of bounds, whether it's another template type, a content type, a page type, probably whatever it is that has an API that you can plug into, which is, I think, the value of a template. It does a lot of work for you. And some of it is, what can the template achieve? And then there's the let's implement it in the right way. And that's the part that I wanted to get, maybe if you are willing to share a specific recent win or a recent implementation with one of your customers to understand what were they looking for, and then, some of the specifics on what they took advantage of with templates and with your service, to understand what they were trying to accomplish and how they did it.
If we should highlight one particular, I would highlight Novo Nordisk, which is a global healthcare company headquartered in Denmark, and they employ more than 50,000 people in around 80 offices around the world. What they did is that after they took the shift to Microsoft 365, they revised a solution for collaboration and how they should share content within clinical studies, where previously they had to use on-premises SharePoint, so they kind of limit to what they could do on-premise SharePoint. But now they also had the option to use Teams and all of the other services in Microsoft 365. And for those type of projects, they are typically done over long periods, and they involve many different parties from many different locations and with an array of functions. So it's kind of complicated content and structure that's within these sites and templates. And what they did to figure out what they actually needed, they ran some pilots using all of the different Microsoft 365 services, and especially Teams and SharePoint, to figure out the right structure in regards to channels and tabs, and also folder structure and so on, to make it easier to let new people adopt the new technologies.
I think my favorite part that you said, which might sound a little weird, was the complexity of it. in that what they were requiring, being that Novo Nordisk, their expectations of who's going to get involved, the amount of content, and the different decision points, and everything they need to track, manage, and probably run metrics on over time. The complexity part is a great requirement to have, but it's also to highlight the value of both the service that you can provide and the complexity that can be removed the next time somebody uses that template. All the things they don't have to configure and set up and manually do minimizes all that complexity for people who maybe aren't directly IT, but just somebody who's a business owner working on the next project.
Exactly, and what they figured out during the pilot was that it required a lot of repetitive tasks to keep those teams in a good structure and in a good place, both regarding the structure, but also in regards of providing access to the different users and so on. So what our customer thought about Anders Jepsen was to drive the adoption of the new technologies by making this collaboration solution what he referred to as data-driven. And I personally really like that term and think it's a great way to use the Microsoft 365 services. So one of the things we have in our product is also an API. So you have the option to use these self-service things, but you can also use the API from another system. So what we did firstly was to configure the templates to fit the requirements. And then we made an integration between the line of business system and to Market 365. So whenever a new trial was available, then a new team was created and the correct template is applied. And also a post was created in the Yammer community to announce that now a new trial has been created. Besides creating the initial team, our product also receives some signals when certain data changes and then templates are applied to the team again. That actually ensures that the initial team doesn't contain a lot of content and structure that isn't required at the beginning. So it isn't created before it actually is about to be used.
So what I was curious about is, when you have this singular template or one template that kind of drives multiple templates depending on the choices that they make, do you have any insights into how often they're using this set of templates at scale?
Yeah, so it's about one new each month. Or some months it's more than that, but they are concurrently running about 2,000 teams. So it's not all of them that have teams enabled at the moment, but the idea is that it's possible to use it for the trials that need it at least.
So what they actually are using, what I think is really smart, is that it's actually a smart template. So there's some things that trigger the creation of the templates from another system. And that sort of spins everything up and starts pushing everything out and invites all the members into the teams and et cetera, et cetera. And then along the way, it keeps monitoring and keeps getting signals from these other systems to sort of figure out, are we in another phase? Does it have to change? And then it will change along the way automatically. That's kind of what I like a lot about this solution that we made for Novo Nordisk is that it sort of morphs as they need it to morph.
Yeah, I love that concept, like a dynamic template, kind of like a form you fill out. And if you choose one thing versus another, you might be asked another question or two. And to have that be something that is not just at the onset, but as the trial expands and maybe they get to phase 2, that makes a lot of sense. If you are building smart templates, and I will just say this out loud, I think you're taking advantage of in a positive way and doing a lot of pretty sophisticated work with templates to the value of what you add on top of what we make available. So if you had 1 minute to provide feedback direct to the SharePoint team, what's the one thing or something that we could do better or at least should consider for a future offering in the template space? Lars, do you mind if we start with you?
Well, actually, I'm not the technical person here, but one of the things that I would like to is that we were able to sort of build our template provision engine on top of the template UI that you guys have created, and that at the moment isn't possible. We sort of have to close down the ways that you guys use and create and use these templates, and then sort of sidetrack our clients over to another space where they can create instead and give them a self-service portal and we can then infuse some adoption and other things in that. But it would be really nice if we could sort of merge these things a little bit closer to each other.
I like that. I'll carry that one over as a templates API, hopefully through Microsoft Graph. Peter, anything from your perspective?
One thing that I really loved was if it got back was the SharePoint list and getting that into the task ecosystem again. So I mean, I really loved using SharePoint list as tasks, and I really love what you did with having the reminder flow that easy to being enabled. But if it could be synchronized to do instead, that would be really nice for a lot of people, I think. Another thing we also did, besides synchronizing or applying templates when data changed, it was that we also synchronized membership to teams. So whenever a new person gets a role or an allocation on a trial, they also get access to the corresponding team. And that is something that is really time-saving for them.
I would imagine, even with some of the customers you were just mentioning, I bet Novo Nordisk would like that ability to, from a template, to have something that then translates to a list getting created with list items. And when that item requires somebody to focus and go do something, to have that be something that as an assignment would show up in the right place, which would be To Do or Planner. All the APIs are there. They're just not quite wired correctly just yet. But definitely in the tasks management space, there's a lot of work that is outside of Planner To Do that feeds, like we know from Word. You can make a comment and assign as task. I know the list team would be open to that feedback. But it's also really nice when you get the realities of partners that are doing a lot of significant work at the depth of, we've tried everything, and what would make something a lot easier? Usually those are really good pieces of feedback. So I appreciate you sharing that. So if that's one customer example, Lars, maybe thinking you've consulted with a number of customers, is there anything that you're seeing as common requirements or common feedback or something that you're just doing for every customer because it makes sense in this space?
Yeah, it has to be predefined content. So when we're sort of having these workshops with clients and figuring what can help them and what can drive them and really create value with them, we're talking about different user scenarios. And these user scenarios then become templates. And in those templates are the predefined content, because they usually need things as a user to be able to be productive from the get-go. So we see a lot of clients, especially if they have project models that they want to sort of facilitate and support, that want to have SharePoint pages with content in them that are pre-populated, or certain types of lists with some information in them. Definitely documents that sort of in template form that support industry documentation standards. We also see Power App tabs and predefined document structures. So they are productive from the get-go. That's something that we generally see from client to client is the same, is that predefined content really helps them in regards to adoption and really making people effective from the start.
Is there anything that you excited about just in the last 1 or 2 years?
Well, now you're asking in the last 2 years, Mark, but I actually would have gone to OG and said Teams, but because I still enjoy seeing how Teams sort of transforms the organization. Just in general, in the last 1 or 2 years, I'm really excited about Viva Topics and Syntex. Being a consultant that sort of has had a constant battle over the last 20 years, trying to figure out how do we surface relevant information in the correct way, and sort of get all the unstructured information structured and sort of surface all the value in it and so to speak, take it from the dark side over to the light. It's really a game changer in regards to Viva Topics and Syntex, and I'm really excited that the licensing model has changed for Syntex. I really think this is gonna be a game changer for working with content and really helping organizations become way more productive and effective.
Hey, you hit on a huge area of investment, and if we can bring it into the topic of today, one of the newest site templates is a Syntex template. So it's blending both of the things that you love.
Yeah, exactly. I'm really excited about that as well.
I appreciate you sharing your time today. I think we've covered a lot around what you do with your specific tooling, the value of what you're doing with your customers, and appreciate you joining us on the Interzone to share all of the above and more.
Yeah, thank you for listening to the feedback that we have. I really like the way that Microsoft currently is moving forward with the changes. So it's really going the right direction, I think.
So there you have it. You see how templates at scale with governance intact can truly help a customer roll out their intranet in the way that they want to. And then as their intranet grows, for it to grow in a way that is easy to manage, easy to be aware of how it's growing, and of course, easier to control. With that, I think we will turn now to talk about events. Events are always a great place. If you have questions about something like the topic of templates, there's always going to be somebody at an event that you can talk to. There will be a couple that we are going to be at. I know that Cathy, who we talked to today, is planning to be at the Microsoft 365 conference, which is in May. I'll talk about that last. But there's always the great value of being able to bring your question, to learn something new, to meet new people, and certainly events, if there's one in your area or for you worth traveling to, which I think a lot of these are, I highly encourage you to jump on a plane, train, an automobile, walk down to the nearest event center, and hopefully one of these is something that meets your needs and is something that you're able to go to. So here are a few events that are coming up. The first is the Collab 365 is hosting a 3-hour Microsoft List workshop with yours truly, me, Mark Cashman, on February 8th. It's a 3-hour course, so we will dig into all things new and old about Microsoft Lists, really a 101, 201 of how to get started, some of the new roadmap capabilities, some of the ways that you can then roll out the List app at greater scale. Some of that is with training others, but certainly it's a soup to nuts. What is lists and how can you use it? If that fits you or somebody that you know, highly encourage you to check out that workshop. And if they're interested, definitely register, and I will see you and them there February 8th. The next day, on February 9th, is an online conference called Reimagine Education. And as it may sound, this one is very focused on supporting schools of all sizes with technology and how Microsoft is approaching reimagining both how we build it, who we build for, and some of the specific offerings that are tailored to administrators, teachers, students, anybody involved with education to make their life easier and certainly to help them get their work done, their actual educational work. Next is Workplace Dudes Summit. This is out of Holland in person, February 24th. There's a lot of great sessions that are listed on their site, and I've just reached out to that event team. It sounds like a great set of people putting on a great conference local to Holland. Again, February 24th, Workplace Dudes Summit. Next, we hop from Holland to Paris, France. On March 27th to the 29th is the Modern Workplace Conference 2023. This is a broader conference. It's a really nice in-person conference. It's a very localized, very community-driven event, but it does take a broader view, and there certainly is a lot to learn, a lot of people to learn from, and of course, if you have feedback, there's a lot of ears for the listening. Now coming back to the States, on April 2nd through the 3rd in Austin, Texas, is an event called Culturati. And I mentioned this one because a number of people from our Microsoft Viva team will be supporting that and certainly sharing all of the new wares of Microsoft Viva, some of the things that you may already know about, some of the things that you might not yet know about. But I bet by then there's going to be a little bit more awareness, and it's a great time if you want to dig in deeper, not only on what these products and value is, but actually how to deploy it, use it, and some of those pieces of feedback that you might want to give direct to the team. Encourage that one, Austin, Texas, April 2nd through the 3rd, Culturati. And the last event that I want to highlight is the Microsoft 365 conference. This is the main days are May 2nd through the 4th, 2023 in Las Vegas, Nevada at the MGM Grand Hotel. There will be 2 pre-day workshops and 1 post-day workshop days, but the value of this conference certainly has grown. There are 4 broader teams here at Microsoft that will be supporting the event. That's the Microsoft Teams team, the Microsoft Viva team, the OneDrive and SharePoint teams, and the Power Platform team. And we're all coming together to host a number of different offerings that will be Microsoft-led alongside the community and MVPs with a lot of great content. We'll have a couple of Microsoft keynotes, a number of Microsoft breakout sessions, and there will also be a couple of Microsoft workshops. And in the mix, always the fun Ask Microsoft Anything night with Jeff Teeper and all of his peers will be up on stage in a panel Q&A. And then after that, we are planning to also have a SharePoint. So great celebrations throughout the entire week. If you haven't been to Vegas recently, it's a great excuse to go, learn some tech, enjoy Vegas, meet a lot of great people, new and old. And it is certainly one that we're leaning into. That's the Microsoft 365 conference, May 2nd through the 4th in Las Vegas, Nevada. If you have any events that you know about that I didn't talk about or you want us to talk about in the future to raise awareness of a great community event, a great regional event, or something that's even more broadly like a destination event, we'd love to hear it. We'd love to be able to highlight it on the show. If you think it's relevant to our audience, then we agree with you already. So always send us new events. Please, please, please let us know. If you're hosting a big or small event, we'd love to know about it. We want to thank our guests, Cathy, Peter, and Lars, for being on the show and for uncovering much of the design, value, and use of templates. We encourage you to check out our show page for links to all of what was discussed today and more. Just go to aka.ms/theintrozone to get started digging through all the things that you might be interested in. If there's something that you can't find, you can always send us any question or any feedback. We can direct them to the SharePoint team, to the Teams team, to the Microsoft 365 Connected team, which is Cathy herself. You can reach us via email at theintrozone@microsoft.com or via Twitter at SharePoint, at mcashman, and at cmcnulty2000. I would love for you to take a moment and rate and review this show. Tell your friends about the show. Let us know what you think about it. If you have this show in your feed, thank you. If you don't, consider subscribing and adding the show wherever you get your tech podcasts from. Click the subscribe button. We would absolutely love that. Thank you so much for listening. I'm your host, Mark Cashman, and this has been The Introzone, a show about the Microsoft 365, the notions of a templates nation intelligent intranet.